You're listening to My Bookcase Slays, a podcast where writers and readers discuss killer books. I'm your host, Melissa Westemeyer, and today we're talking with Elle Hartford, the author of The Alchemist Tales. I got to read the first in that series, Beauty and the Alchemist, this past week, and Elle is here to talk to us about her series. Welcome, Elle.
Yay! Thank you so much for having me.
Before we get started talking about the book specifically, I'd like to talk to you more broadly about this series, which is by definition a cozy, but it has paranormal elements,
Mm.
right? So talk
Hmm.
to listeners about this mashup of genres that you have kind of created here.
Absolutely. Okay. In a way, it's sort of like getting the elephant out of the room, right? Because it has all of the cozy mystery tropes, um, including, like the punny title, everything, start to finish. But it's in a fantasy world. So obviously we have all kinds of like paranormal cozy mystery genres out there. Maybe you have ghosts or vampires or all these fun things. And honestly, I saw all that, love it very much, and just went one step further by using a fairy tale town as my setting. It was a very conscious choice, I love blending genres. I love fantasy. Um, and I saw that, we'd done everything except that in the cozy mystery world. But also, I think it comes down to the fact that I really struggle to write things that don't have magic in them.
Okay. What kind of readers tend to be drawn to your work? The cozy crowd, obviously, but are there other readers
Hmm.
as well?
Yeah. And this is what is really so much fun about the cozy space. Cozy fantasy is a growing genre in its own right, right? Like Legends and Lattes, of course, was one of the really big hits there. Cozy sci fi, honestly, is also really big. A lot of my readers, especially who started out with me a couple years ago now, is when Beauty and the Alchemist came out. A lot of those readers are, you're like your classical cozy mystery readers. They're also reading a lot of paranormal cozies. But I do have a growing audience too amongst fantasy readers. Tend to be, a little bit younger folks who really just want an escape, which, these days it's a lot of us.
Absolutely. That's funny that you say that about younger readers because I definitely thought that I felt a little bit like I was stepping back in time when I was a little girl and I used to read
Mm.
pretty vigorously, honestly. And I was like, oh, this is sort of bringing me back into that world of magic, and but it was familiar turf, even though it was new.
Oh, that's,
There's a familiar
yeah.
feel to it, and I liked that.
That's wonderful. I'm so glad. And yeah, and that is also fairy tales are one thing which we can get into. I love just the wealth of material that is there, but also at a more basic level, yeah. I knew, and I know about this series that um, going so far into fantasy is not everybody's cup of tea. And for a lot of mystery readers, it might not be something that they've read before, to have like an actual magical town, to have, say, elves as characters. That might be unfamiliar. So it is always on my mind to try and help the reader feel at home and like have these kind of anchor points of things that are relatable and consistent.
And it's funny, I before I read this, I hadn't really given paranormal cozies much thought, but then I realized one of my favorite series from a while back is Nancy Atherton's Antimony mysteries.
Mm,
The
mm-hmm,
the
mm-hmm.
main character has a dead relative
Right,
talking to her through letters and stuff, and I'm like, oh,
right.
yeah, I suppose I have been reading this without really thinking I have been, so that's kind of cool.
Well, and I think that's the thing, because I will hear from people sometimes. They'll come up to me at book fairs or just in conversations, um, and they'll say, yeah, like, oh, I don't know, I don't really read fantasy. And then they'll come back or we'll start talking and they'll be like, oh, well, actually this isn't really like, once I got past the fact that this character is green,
Yeah,
it's really not that different. And
right.
I really like that moment of being like, oh, okay, I thought it was weird, but actually, not in an off-putting way. Still maybe a little weird.
To get past certain things, you just find yourself in the story, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So, which of
mm-hmm.
your characters do you think would be the most fun to hang out with in real life, if such a thing?
Ooh. Okay. Um, the what immediately comes to mind is, many cozy mystery sleuths. My sleuth does have a dog, and because this is a fantasy world, the dog can talk. So his name is William, and he has the personality that I imagine my tortoise to have, which I know is like a little bit of there's a lot of like weird layers in that. But I love dogs, first of all. Love big fluffy dogs, which is what William is. When I started writing this series, um I lived in an apartment. We had moved a lot. All I had was this little tortoise, and he is like, I know people say you don't really get personality from reptiles, or anything we think we see in them we're just projecting onto them, and that might be true, but also like this tortoise, like he will go through anything that is in his way always. He knows what he wants. He can give you a really good stink eye if you don't let him out or whatever. Whatever he wants in that moment. So when I gave Red, the alchemist, the sleuth in the series, when I gave Red her sidekick, I essentially created like the dog that I really wanted with the personality that my tortoise has.
Love that. I love that.
Which is a really, really long and roundabout way of saying, since then, readers have come to me and said that they really enjoy William's sense of humor. And so he's the one who comes to mind when I think that he's probably the standout character that a lot of people would want to hang out with. To be totally honest, though, um, ooh, it's hard. I love all my characters so dearly, but I also really like Luca, the bookseller. He's one of the side characters who ends up under suspicion in the first book.
So what this is a pretty complicated series to write because there's this mashup, there's a lot of invention happening. What is the hardest part of this series for you to write?
Hmm. Okay. And I'm going to bring it back around to fairy tales a little bit that we touched on earlier. Each novel in this series is a retold fairy tale. So we start off with Beauty and the Beast for Beauty and the Alchemist. And then we go on through there. We've done Snow White, Little Mermaid, Cinderella, big classic fairy tales that people recognize. And that is both one of my favorite things to write and also probably the hardest, aside from just the mechanics of like plotting out the murder and the clues. One of the hardest things is taking these fairy tales and being like, okay, like I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write this mystery with the fairy tale mixed in. And the hard part comes not so much from figuring out like how to mix the two together, because there's a lot of crazy things that happen in fairy tales, like putting murder in is not tough.
Kind of an interesting nuance.
Yeah, that part comes pretty naturally. um but then exploring all of the themes within the tale, and I usually try and draw that out. Like we usually have kind of like the main fairy tale, but then other variations of the fairy tale that will play in as subplots as the tale goes on. I'm thinking especially of Cinderella as I say that. What I find, it can be a little bit daunting but ultimately extremely rewarding, is a lot of these fairy tales dive pretty deep into issues that we might consider dark. There's a lot of abuse that happens. There's a lot of sad backstories, but I really feel really strongly that the cozy genre is a great place to talk about these things, because we can have these conversations. We meet these characters, we encounter these crimes that are, these characters are dealing with very real issues. But in a cozy setting, we know that it's going to be okay. It's going to work out and that they will find the support that they need from everyone around them. So the hard thing can be, just like getting into diving into those depths, right? And making sure that we do so in like a respectful manner. But then the really wonderful thing is coming out the other side.
Yes. Yeah, I can see that. What inspired you initially to go down this path with the Alchemical Tales?
So I've always been a writer. Most, is just writing essentially fan fiction for myself.
Mm.
And it kind of morphed into, me then like creating all these worlds, but it was all, you know, just something that I did for me. And I was very, very shy, would never consider publishing. Um, but shortly before the pandemic, I encountered a writing contest. It was in the early days of Readsy.com. And Readsy, wonderful resource for authors. They still do writing contests. They do all kinds of stuff too, though. Advice, lessons, that sort of thing. Anyway, they had a contest that was essentially like blend two genres together. And one of their suggestions for blended genres was mystery and fantasy. And I had been, up to that point, pretty much always writing in fantasy, but I was reading a lot of mystery and I had a lot of respect for mystery genre. So I was like, oh, I don't know. I love writing. Could I write a mystery? I don't know. And I gave it a shot. I had just a short story, but Red and William, her sidekick, were there, and it was a lot of fun. And at that time, it wasn't nothing about fairy tales, just purely mystery in a fantasy town. Pretty soon after that, I think the pandemic hit, and then it was just kind of like a perfect storm of like, oh look, I have this project I can go focus on instead.
Excellent hobby to pick up at that time, for sure.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, when your friends and family read your books, what is a question that they keep asking you about?
Hmm, that's a good question. Of course, some people will be like, "Oh, okay, am I this character? Am I that character?" Right?
Yeah.
You always get a little bit of that. I think they mostly do it to tease me at this point. And at this point, nowadays, most people ask, honestly, most people ask which character is going to be the next one to get their own spinoff,
Okay.
which is very sweet. Because I have kind of a track record. I have the Alchemical Tales is my main series. I have a spin-off that is cozy romance set in the same town, so it's got that fantasy vibe. But there's sweet little novellas. It's spin-off series, and some of the characters end up there, getting matched. There's like a matchmaker who comes into town and messes things up. Um, and then I have another spin-off series as well that's in the same world but in a different town, with a character who is just tangentially related. So now that I have kind of established this habit of like everything that I write is in this world, now that's what people ask.
And is there a character that hasn't gotten their due yet that you're like, oh, I need to give them a little love, a little attention?
Uh, yes. Yes, there are several. The really fun thing about the romance series was because it's set in Belleville in the main town. And there's a recurring matchmaker, but each book is a new couple. So that was great. I could just knock off a lot of characters.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
And, yeah. But eventually you're like, man, everyone in this town is going to be married. so so yeah, I need to move at least the romance aspect to a different town, I think.
Yeah. Recruit some new blood somehow.
Yeah.
A fairy tale that you haven't dipped into yet that you're looking forward to playing with?
Ooh, That's another good question. I haven't done anything, and I do kind of have the rest of the series sketched out. So I have a vague idea of where we're headed next. And one that I'm really looking forward to that I haven't played with yet is the idea of the 12 dancing princesses, right? Yeah. Yeah, I think that one already as it comes, that story has kind of a mystery to it, like where are they going each night? What are they doing? So that I think is going to be a lot of fun. The one that I'm working on right now is so kind of a travel one, right? We have to get out of Belleville. We can't kill everybody in town, can't kill them all, can't match make them all. Um, so the one that I'm working on right now is they head to a different island and there they encounter a bunch of different facets of Greek mythology. And I'm
Oh,
having a lot of fun with that because I loved Greek mythology when I was a kid.
yes.
So,
That sounds
yeah.
very cool.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, there's a huge wealth of plot lines and characters and
Yeah.
superpowers to mess around with when you get into that camp for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
So, on that note, is there a superpower that you personally would like to have?
Okay. This is a fun question and I enjoy it in maybe a slightly different context than it's intended. I don't know about, any of the classic like superhero superpowers. I don't necessarily want to read anyone's mind or like, turn invisible or fly or anything. Oh, flying might be good. But um I remember when I was first working on Beauty and the Alchemist, I submitted it to, I believe it was either Sisters in Crime or Mystery Writers of America. So, big plug for both of those organizations. But one of them ran a campaign where you could give them your first, 3 chapters and get feedback from somebody, an author who was established in your genre. And I remember very clearly the woman who gave me feedback, one of the things she said was, I love how all of the characters has their own superpower. And it wasn't, it, I know we're talking about a fantasy setting, but it wasn't magic. It was like in the first couple chapters, we meet a friend of Red's who is a tinkerer who does a lot of building. And so he knows a lot about, he's telling them a lot about this old greenhouse and the different features and what they are. Obviously, we have Luca, the bookseller. Like his big thing is he's very good at research. And obviously he loves books, but like he's got a very good mind for like, okay, how can we figure this out? I think I know, and that was her feedback, was everybody has their strength really, because it's not always magic. And I really, really, really liked that idea. And so to bring it back around, I will tie in a little bit of magic. I really like Red's ability she's an alchemist. So obviously a big part of her day job is like making potions. It's so cool. But then she also has like all the, the scientific equipment and kind of the botanical and geological knowledge that makes her very, very helpful when it comes to investigating mysteries, which
Yeah.
also is just fun stuff to know.
Oh,
Like, I like that.
absolutely. Yeah, that is cool. I know. Whenever I read stories about people, especially in older books, where they talk about, oh, they knew how to throw this plant and this plant together and make a paste, and it would take the
Yeah,
sting out of an insect bite or whatever. That's not necessarily a superpower or magic, but it is a cool thing to know how to do.
exactly. Yeah, that takes so much practice too. Yeah,
Yes. I know. I always
yeah.
ask myself that question, like, who is the first person to pick up whatever weird plant and think, oh, if I peel it, maybe it'll, you know, do this.
I
Or if
know.
I boil it, it'll do that. You know me.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Sometimes some deadly trial and error,
that
I
might be the
imagine.
story to look into next, right?
Yeah.
So, Elle, what is on your bookshelf right now?
Ooh, I have so many books on my bookshelf right now. In part because I had a friend who was moving who was like, "Here,
Oh,
here's
nice.
here's my collection of like witchy contemporary books." Um, so I've been working my way through those. I've also been rereading a lot of Elizabeth Peters' work. I just started Borrower of the Night last night, and I've read it before ages ago. So it's fun. I'm kind of rediscovering it. I love her Amelia Peabody series so much. But this one is a Vicky Bliss, a kind of more historical artifacts and things. It's a lot of fun. So,
Cool. All right, and then
mhm.
now book 9 is coming out in this series.
Yeah, eventually. The wonderful thing about being an indie author is that I control my schedule, but also the difficult thing is that I control my schedule. But I am working on it. It has a title. It is Labyrinth of Crime. Like I said, they Red and her friends take a trip to some Greek inspired islands.
Cool.
And I'm finishing up edits, so it should be out this fall, hopefully.
So this fall, The Labyrinth of Crime.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, so readers, keep an eye out for that by Elle Hartford. And in closing, Elle also has a podcast with the Authors on the Air radio network. You can listen
Mhm.
to her interviewing people in the mystery genre mostly, right?
Yeah, mystery and fantasy. Yeah, cozy alchemy.
Oh,
Yeah.
Cozy
Hmm.
Alchemy. So if you want to
Hmm.
get more into that world, that's a great spot to start. She'll have all kinds of good recommendations and authors for you to check out, books that you can check out. So thank you so much, Elle, for your time today, and best of luck with the new book in the
The Alchemical Tales.
Alchemical Tales. Ah, sounds easy. Okay. Best of luck with the next in the series of the Alchemical Tales.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for having me. This has been a lot of fun. I love a chance to ramble.